Signore e signori, buonasera, benvenuti. Welcome to Casa Italiana, Zerilli-Marimò, New York University, for this very much awaited appointment with which we close the activities for the entire academic year, and it's a tradition to have the artistic delegation of Open Roads at the festival at Lincoln Center. So it's always great to have a group of directors that have made the film in the last year and to be able to talk to them about their work, about their future project, their present project, and much more. We don't have three of the people that were originally scheduled to come. So the good news is that we're going to have more time to talk about their films with these ones that actually came. And the structure of the evening is very simple. You just saw the trailer for the entire festival produced by Lincoln Center. And I'm going to be on the stage with Leonardo. I'm going to tell you just a bit more about him in a minute. And we're going to present every director very, very concisely. Since COVID brought many bad things. One good thing is that we do not do anymore the long presentation. He made this film, he studied here at kindergarten, his teacher was, no. And all of that, you find it on our website, the website of Cinecittà, the website of Lincoln Center. So it's going to be very, very short, and we're going to see the trailer of each of their films, and then we're going to have a couple of questions with Leonardo and myself. And then at the end, we're going to try to have questions that are a bit more inclusive and that involve more or less all of them at some point. Before we start, I want to acknowledge the people and the institutions that made Open Roads, Italian Festival of Cinema at Lincoln Center, possible. First and foremost, Cinecittà. We have the fortune of having here with us today Dr. Maccanico, who is the CEO of Cinecittà. He deserves a big applause also because under his leadership, Cinecittà was able actually to renew itself, to expand even, and to find new ground for a mission that is ancient, but also very modern. And you're doing a great job. Congratulations for what you and your collaborators are doing with Cinecittà. And if how many of you have visited Cinecittà, the studios? Bravi. But if you're in Rome, go visit the studios also because they created two small museum centers, one dedicated to Fellini and one that goes through a very didactical way the steps of making cinema. It's a delight, it's a pleasure to visit, and you will see really where dreams are made. So thank you again, Cinecittà, and of course with Dr. Maccanico, we... Much better.
You are ready to be the CEO of Cinecittà. You are perfect. Just that.
And of course, I want to thank all the collaborators of Dr. Maccanico, and in particular Griselda and Monique, that have been, Griselda Guerrasio, Monique Caterino, who have been the columns of Open Road here in New York. As far as we're concerned, they are the face of Open Road, and I thank them for their patience. Paola, Rossella, all the people that work with you. And of course, Sally Fisher, that is La Fata, that makes sure that everything works perfectly. And there is nothing that is unforeseen if you work with Sally because she has already foreseen and the solution is on the way. So thanks to all of you for making this possible, for making this meeting possible. And now I would like to ask Leonardo Campaner to come to the stage with me. And I'm going to tell you just two things about Leonardo. For him too, we're not going to have the full bio. Leo is originally from Venice. He studied film at Columbia University. One of his teachers is somebody that probably many of you knew, and it's Richard Peña, that for many years did what I'm doing here now with Open Roads. And for Richard. And he's now studying for a Ph.D. in film studies and Italian studies here at New York University in this very department. We have worked together on a course that we are actually teaching right now on the representation of history in Italian cinema. So, and Leonardo is going to be here with me to help me moderate and animate the conversation. With all these changes, Leo, who goes first now?
We have Paraíso.
Yes.
Enrico Maria Artale. We should play now. Oh, yes, sorry.
Oh, and by the way, we also changed the microphones
Hello?
and the amplifiers and the projector. Last night, I think Kostya and Julian, my collaborators, were here until midnight, way after midnight. And for a moment, we thought we wouldn't be able to screen anything and to have microphones. Magically, something has worked. So I thank also all of them for their passion and their good work. And now it seems that the microphones are working.
Yes, so the first film, well, thank you very much and welcome, and thank you for having me. The first film that we're gonna show a clip of is El Paraíso by Enrico Maria Artale, who's here with us. Again, I don't want to go into too much into the bio, but we want to go into the conversation. So I think we should play the clip. All I think you need to know is that about a very particular mother-son love story, and you'll probably see it from the clip. Thank you.
Te la posso tagliare quasi il 50.
Ti dico per carità, la pizza in Colombia mai. Ma questa mi si mette di traverso. Oh, e che te devo dire? Allora mangiamo questa pizza. Si me la servita?
¡Ay, qué rico! Esta es la comida favorita de Julio desde que estaba chiquito.
¿Sabes que en Colombia hay diferentes tipos de arepa?
Fammi far corriere. Sta bene così.
Sto bene così?
Sì, sta bene così.
¡Ay, puta!
Questi.
Signora, da dove arriva lei?
Ah, sono colombiana.
Deve venire in centrale con noi. Se è il semplice controllo, fate il suo controllo e basta.
Questo passaporto è stato contraffatto.
Maddalena Galvan si chiama. Sono il figlio, cazzo, lo
Ma
saprò.
non mi basta che lo dice usted.
Che devi fare con quella, mo?
Hablar con Lucho, irse para Colombia. ¿Para dónde crees que te vas a ir, pedazo de hijueputa? ¡No! Amore eterno e inolvidable, tarde o temprano estaré contigo para seguir.
Tu non mi racconti mai i sogni che fai?
Amándonos.
Of course.
It's not an Italian film.
So, El Paraíso. So, when I watched it a few days ago, I was really touched. It's a very, very intense mother and son love story. And it's a very character-driven film and performance-driven film. The actors all gave a great performance, do a beautiful job, in particular Edoardo Pesce. So I wanted to ask Enrico, who's here, to speak a little bit about, I guess this is kind of the question that we're going to ask everybody as a first question, to speak a little bit about the genesis of the film and the process of making it. If I'm not mistaken, you came up with the idea for the story together with your lead actor, Edoardo Pesce. So what was the process of working together, and also what was it about the mother-son relationship that intrigued you the most and that you wanted in particular to explore? Thank you very much.
What I'm always saying is that this film comes out of a friendship, first of all, because me and Edoardo, we met on my first film almost 10 years ago now, and we became extremely close right away. It was an important friendship for my work because Edoardo was supporting me a lot when the things were not working so well. But it was also very important relationship in my life. And one night, after we hanged out and we were at mine and we were probably drunk, Edoardo is somebody who keeps you telling you stories and ideas all the time. And he told me something that I'm not gonna say because I prefer not to say to people who hasn't seen the film yet, but get really stuck in my mind because it touched a need, I would say, I had at the time, which was trying to get deep into the complicated relationship I had with my mom until I was 20 or 22. And so, yeah, somehow something came out of him, which was not personal for him, because he had a very different relationship with his mother, but that triggered something crucial for me at the time. So we started a very long development process, which was mainly to sort out all the things that I wanted to, all the fears I had and all the things I wanted to elaborate in this movie about this sort of love story between a mother and a son. And that's it. So it's this friendship that helped me to face something that it was a little aside in my life.
Okay, great, thank you. And I guess to follow up, the character, the mother is from Colombia. She's from Colombia. She also, I don't want to give any spoilers for the film, but there is also, I can say safely that there is some illegal activities that they're involved in. So I guess that aspect, and also a kind of, I guess, the sociological context in which you place these characters, aside from the human element. What was what was the intention behind it when you were coming up with the idea, when you were developing the story? And I guess connected to that, also I wanted to ask if during the process of making the film, was it very close to the script, or was there a lot of improvisation involved? Did you discover things in the process of shooting the film with your actors? Which obviously often happens, usually happens, but particularly in a character-driven film the performance is so central. I think perhaps there were things that came up on set that were not in the script.
The film has a very long story of development that it's not easy to make it short, but I'll try. Let's say that the addiction was there from the very first idea, which had nothing to do with Colombia. It was the story of this guy who wants to bring his mother ashes to Graceland in Memphis because he thinks he's the son of Elvis Presley. So we really started from something very far from what we have now.
I want to see that film.
But it was probably cool, but messy for me and less interesting from my personal point of view. But so the addiction was there, and it was there because there is addiction in love relationships, of course, not only between a mother and a son. And so it worked as a metaphor and was crucial for me. Then Colombia came into the story because it's a country that I love and that I know very well. Because again, I had friends in Colombia, I had a love story in Colombia, I've been traveling a lot in the country. And so I thought, okay, why I should start from the Colombian cliche of drug trafficking and work on it to mislead a little bit the audience and to bring the audience something much more ordinary and true and simple than the drug trafficking they always hear about when they think about Pablo Escobar and all the fancy stuff. So somehow this came into the film, and also my need was to, through the eyes of these two characters, and especially the character of the mother, to build a world in the Roman suburbs that has this fantasy of South America in a nostalgic way, because this woman fled her country when she was like around 20 years old, and she's built this world because she needed something like a bubble, like a paradise, you know, like a fictional reality somehow, in order to have this relationship with his son that exclusive. They even spoke a language which is basically the language of their own, because it's a constant mixture between Italian, Roman, basically, and Spanish, so that almost nobody else could understand. So, you know, there was partly a desire for me to work with these visual cliches of South America, but most of it came from the story itself, to build their own fantasies where the only two could live. And if I go to the other part of the question, which was improvising, well, language was a big enemy of improvisation in this film, because none of the actors spoke the other language before we started the preparation process. And COVID helped us a little because it delayed us. So Margherita had almost like a year to learn Italian. But even when she arrived in Italy 1 month before the shooting, yes, she learned the theory of it, but she couldn't get, you know, the real Roman attitude in the way of speaking, in the way of deforming the language. And so we had to train her, like bringing her to marketplaces in Rome and improvising some fake arguments with the people who were selling fruits who didn't know she was a very established actress, in order to make it alive somehow. So we didn't do a lot of improvisation with the text, but we were doing improvisation with the moods and with emotions, which for me at the end it was much more interesting because it was more inner. We were working on a deeper level, you know. I'm always saying that Edoardo has improvised a lot of silence in these movies, you know.
Okay, great. I'm not sure if Stefano, you wanna.
I have a question. So silence is exactly something I noticed in the film, and they play a very important role. The dialogues, of course, are precious, and these koiné, this language that is common only to mother and son. And I actually think that it makes sense that she doesn't speak Roman perfectly, and that she still has these imperfections of somebody that came from her own country and really doesn't want to leave it completely. And therefore, this attachment is seen in the fact that she doesn't let go her own pronunciations, her own intonation. But the silences, I think, especially in the son, in Edoardo Pesce, he's a master in giving meaning to these silences. So, I mean, he's a very, very good actor and well directed. But is there something you discussed? How are we going to fill these silent spaces? What are we going to do, and how is it going to look, and what is it going to mean?
Well, regarding the language of Margherita, it's also inspired, well, not really inspired, but I remember I had like an aunt that I loved very much. She was the sister of my grandmother, and she's been living in London for like 60 years. And even when she was 80 years old, and she was there from the 50s, when she was speaking over the phone with some people that were Brits, they were not from Italian origins, she was always addressing them, saying like "ma figlia bella, gioia mia," the words in Sicilian, because she was Sicilian. And I know it was just a way for her, as you said, to keep the relation with the motherland alive. And for Margherita, it was very natural to do that. And of course, when she was talking in Spanish or with Spanish words, she had the possibility to improvise a little more, and also to be more vulgar, you know, to be more visceral somehow with the language. With Edoardo, it's something we found out on set. We realized that he had much more lines in certain scenes, but already in set, and sometimes in the editing room, but already in set we were kind of realizing that we didn't need those lines, and they were not really fitting the character. I wouldn't believe the character would say those lines, because it's much more repressed somehow. It's much more difficult for him to speak out, and I thought it was more touching and more true to have it like silence almost more all the time. And then Edoardo in real life is somebody who speaks all the time. So for him it was even frustrating and non-natural, and we had arguments about that. And yeah, and he was frustrated, but that frustration for me was also good, you know. There was a moment in rehearsal. Edoardo is a very alpha male, let's say, who's always very bully, and is big, so it might be not so easy to handle him, let's say. And he was always telling Margherita what to do. No, but at this point, it's good if you open the fridge or you take the thing. And I mean, since some of his indications were good, I would let him do it, because why should I step in and say, no, stop talking, and then say the same thing? I would let him do the work for me, you know? It's okay, I'm saving some
Do you
energy,
think it has to do with the fact that he was involved in the development of the script?
No, it's just his character.
His character.
It's his character.
He would be boss even if he had not written a line of it.
Yeah, and one day she really freaked out, legitimately, and she started screaming at him in a way which was partly the character, partly Margherita. She started screaming like, "Stop telling me what I have to do, and I'm an actress, I have much more experience than you, you know, I'm not coming from nowhere." And I felt that, and she was very aggressive, and I felt that Eduardo really had the instinct to push her, somehow, and he repressed it, and that was the character. That when he repressed the instinct, it was Julio for the first time.
Did you capture that on camera?
Yeah, but for real, at that time we were very, very scared. Me and my assist, we were actually very scared they were going to fight. Yeah, so we were not excited, not at all. Yeah.
We'll come back to you. This is not about the dangers of being a film director in Italy. Leo, who's next?
Okay, so I guess we're going to move on to the next film. Actually, El Paraíso and this next film share a connection between Italy and Latin America. Perhaps they share some other aspects, but other than that, they're very different. So the next film is Oceans Are the Real Continents by Tommaso Santambrogio, and we'll see the clip.
Hoy Estados Unidos celebrará hoy una nueva ronda de conversaciones sobre migración. Nuestro país está viviendo el mayor éxodo migratorio de su historia.
No, en un avión. Nosotros vamos a estar ahí cuando seamos grandes.
Aquí parece que el tiempo no existe.
La libertad es la esencia de la vida.
Evita, para que las cosas cambien, no podemos esperar a que otros intervengan, ¿entiendes?
Tú vas a ver que todo va a estar bien. Todo va a cambiar.
No quiero que nada cambie.
No me olvides.
Tommaso, so I guess the first question is the same for everybody. If you can tell us a little bit about the genesis of the film and the process of making it. I believe you may have correct me if I'm wrong, you made this originally as a short version of this with some of the same actors.
Yeah.
So if you want to take it from there and tell us a little bit about how it came to be.
Well, hello to everybody. Yes, actually, like the process started in between 2018 2019. Because I went to Cuba for studying for a short period of time. While I was there, I was like doing some research about like the idea of developing like a project about the topic of separation, because it's something that, well, in every island, but especially like in Cuba, you get used to see quite often because of, the migration waves, even like all the topics that then I'll explore like in the movie. But I wanted like to start working in a documentarian way, so a documentarian process. So I started like going to San Antonio de los Baños. There was like a small town in the inland close by to the school where I was studying. And I wanted to explore like a marginal place, not like to shoot it like in La Habana or in a big city. I want to explore like the small town with like the daily routine, the places where like there is a famous poet in Cuba that used to say, aquí no pasa nada, hay solo la vida pasando. Nothing happens here, there is just life that happens. And I started like going around and taking a lot of coffees. So I was basically spending my day like going from one house to the other, drinking coffee from one place to the other. Actually, because the coffee in Cuba is really great. And then, like, I was kind of lost because I heard so many stories. I met so many people that, like, after a while, I knew basically the whole town, but I didn't find like the right people for like what I wanted to explore. And then suddenly, like, a friend of mine that was working as a producer told me, I have to introduce you to a friend of mine that could be perfect, like, for what you're looking for, because she's just lived like a separation with her boyfriend. And so she's kind of in that process of like elaborating this moment. So he introduced me to Edith. This is one of the main protagonists of my movie. And then I was really talking a lot with her and getting along really, really well. And So it was like we were spending like days together, talking, exploring San Antonio, and telling everything about our personal background and stories, why we wanted to explore that topic, the idea of the process that I wanted to explore and to try to do. And she then introduced me to Alexander, that is one of the other protagonists of the movie. The movie is like a human mosaic of many different stories about the topic of separation, 3 different perspectives on a time base, like present perspective, past perspective, and future perspective about separation in a small town. And so I started speaking a lot with them and explored like the whole town together with them. And then I also told to them like which was my idea, that I wanted to have like 3 different stories, 3 different time-based stories. And then Alexander told me, I have to introduce you to an old lady that just live across the streets where I'm like teaching to the students here in San Antonio, that comes like to the end of the lesson just to clean up like the theater, and that has like a story that could interest you, that is connected to Angola. There is like a trauma for Cuba, like it's kind of like Vietnam War for Cuba. I mean, that a lot of people, for the US, sorry, a lot of people were like soldiers in Angola in the 70s, the 80s, until the beginning of the 90s. Actually, a lot of people died there, or the one that came back had like a post-trauma, a post-war trauma, because of that experience. The Milagro story is strictly connected to this historical event. And then I had to find like the other characters that are just 2 children of 8 years old. But I started like to explore like with these first characters, and to start filming in a documentarian way, like their daily routine, what they were doing, what, like talking about their past, the real past, to see what happened, like trying to build out like a story out of their real interaction, daily routine. And I ended up doing like a short movie with just like the Alexander and Edith, 2 of the protagonists of the feature. With that short movie, I submitted that to Venice Film Festival, was selected there in 2019, was screened there. And then after that, I get to Venice already with a cut with the 3 stories, with all the characters together, saying, okay, this is like a short movie, but I want to do like a feature movie. This is just like an idea of what I'm exploring, and this is really what I wanted to do. Then it started like the process. My idea was just to go like in a guerrilla style, like after a few months after, to shoot the whole movie. But then COVID happened, and so I started writing. And so actually the documentarian process became like a fictional process of the stories. So in the end, like, is a movie that is like fiction du réel, is like a fiction of the reality, because the real characters are playing themselves and their real stories, but throughout like a narrative arc and a narrative structure. So it was really like an interesting process, because I was writing, then coming back to the characters, to Alexander, Edith, Milagros, and the children. And well, the children know, because they never had the chance to read the script, but with the other characters, yes. And kind of writing, rewriting, shaping like the story according to their sensitiveness, their perception of what I was doing, and was kind of like an horizontal process that lasted for 3 years and a half. And then I got like the money in order to do the movie, and finally I shot it like in 2022. And actually we were really close, because we were spending like nearly 4 years together all the time, because I was staying in Cuba most of my time, living there. And so it was like a beautiful process, and Cuba changed while I was filming, while I was thinking, also because thinking the movie, because at the beginning in 2019, there was not like a migration crisis in Cuba. It was something that, yeah, it happened in the past, but was not like a contemporary issue. And when we filmed, like actually was happening the biggest migration crisis of the country in 2022, 2023, like nearly the 10% of the population left the country. So it was really something that became contemporary. It's really like, I mean, even most of the people that took part in the movie left straight after that we shoot. Yeah.
Okay, great, thank you. So I have two related questions. One is more about style and one about themes. I'll ask the one about style a little bit first. It seemed to me that there's a wide range of influences, clearly, going from, you spoke about fiction du réel. I see a lot of ethnographic documentary as well. But perhaps most strikingly, there's the kind of observational cinema that most recently we see in certain Asian directors like Apichatpong Weerasethakul and Lav Diaz. In particular, you work with Lav Diaz, you made a film with him.
Yeah.
So he's a kind of a mentor to you.
Yeah.
And you know, Lav Diaz, for those of you who are unfamiliar, you won actually Venice once with perhaps his shortest film, which is 4 hours long. It's called The Woman Who Left. But there also is like static observational camera, black and white. A lot of his films are about the history of the Philippines. But they have a kind of documentary quality to them. So I'll let you tell us more about it. But yes, how the style was determined, how was it the subject matter, the place, a little bit of different factors? I imagine it's a combination of all these things together.
Actually, it's a combination of all these elements. I mean, even if you want like to shoot like a movie with like I don't know, drones or technical crazy stuff, like in Cuba, it's kind of impossible nowadays because there are not like the materials to do that that used to be, because Fast and Furious was shot there, I think in 2016, something like that. But yeah, you know, they took everything from LA and Miami, so it was easier. Yeah, actually my influences are in between documentary and fiction. I love like I studied like economics and then like a bit of anthropology, so I'm really like interested like in ethnographic works and post-colonial countries and talking about like these kind of topics and working in between fiction and documentary. Yeah, I mean, like there are so many influences also because like this is my first feature film. So actually when you end up doing your first feature, you try to put everything inside. I mean, it's your whole life because you don't know if you will get like another chance to shoot. So it's like, okay, let's try to put everything together and see what happens. And at least I have like, you know, a testament. Well, and that was actually what I did. So I end up like, you know, I have like so many influences but even like stimuli, and then the reality that was like probably like the biggest influence on me because I was kind of writing together with real people telling their real stories. That was the most important thing, and respecting their stories was the most important thing, and working together in the best possible way was the main drive to my work. And then of course I also had the chance to study a little bit with Herzog and then with Lav Diaz, and Lav Diaz I had the chance to work with him on one movie in the Philippines. I spent a bit of time in the Philippines together with him, so and working photography in his movie, so I get to know some of the essential like tools and the workflow that I used to do. But actually I also worked like in Italy as an assistant director, and that was also useful because you see how like you know, a big movie is made with a lot of assistants, a lot of people, then an independent Italian movie how it's made, then like Filipino crazy director how it works, and then like another you know, you see a lot of things and then you end up choosing which one suits more for you, and that was what happened. And I mean, I like, for example, of the Lav Diaz process, that is like a familiar work. I mean, like it's a bunch of people that stay together, eat together, spend all the time together, talk a little bit, and then it was really funny because Lav Diaz is a crazy process that is writing and shooting at the same time. So in the during the night and the morning is writing, and in the afternoon is shooting, and in the night we were talking, and like suddenly it happened that we were talking about, I don't know, Beatles, like in the night, and the day after there was like a, you know, on the script, like a scene about the Beatles. So it was really like an organic process. And I like to keep it fresh. I mean, that you write a lot of days, a lot of years, your movie, but then you're kind of changing while you're filming a lot of stuff in order to keep this spontaneous approach to filmmaking, if it's possible, of course. That is possible only like in independent cinema, and my movie has not like a huge budget, as you're gonna see. And then actually I was lucky because shooting in Cuba, like the producer can control you, so it's really easy. I mean, you're like in an island when neither like internet is working really well, so it's better for like the artistic process than
creative
it's worse.
freedom of the
Yeah.
director.
I mean,
Tommaso, I want to follow up to what...
yeah, sorry, I'm over talking all the
that's
time.
perfect.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what Leonardo wanted to know. And as you can tell, he's very cosmopolitan. He knows the cinematography of the entire world. I'm a bit more parochial. So the first thing that came to mind when I saw your film, especially the scenes with the kids, of course, was neorealism.
Yeah.
And all the presence of the kids.
Yeah.
There are kids that are also adults.
Mhm.
And the way in which you shoot them and they are presented, their voice is very deep. They are little adults that present a sort of consciousness of the other characters. So I was wondering whether that was also one of your influences.
No, I mean, not really. I mean, yes, the neorealism, of course. I mean, like, I'm Italian. I studied like cinema in Italy. I
But
grown
the
up like
interesting thing is
watching
that
cinema.
It's becoming very influential also in cinematographers of other countries, like
Yes.
Iran, and many others. Every now and then there is somebody that makes a film and says, I learned everything from the Italian neorealism, and they're on the other side of the world. So there are some sort of seeds that have been planted and then they grow somewhere else.
Really interesting because, for example, for me, one of the best directors is Kiarostami. There is always saying that he's like a great fan of like the neorealism and of Vittorio De Sica and other directors, and I love like Kiarostami. So in the end, I'm kind of inspired by the directors that is inspired from Italian. So I keep going back to Italy. But then on the other end, like the kids were just kind of improvising most of the dialogues. And they seems like little adults because that's the way the kids are like in the barrios in Cuba, because the machist attitude is like, okay, you're 8 years old, but you're speaking like an adult. You try to imitate that attitude, and it's really funny. To me, it was hilarious. I mean, it was really, it was like the best part of the shooting because it was having so much fun with them, because at the beginning they were a bit like afraid or like shy in front of the camera. Then the day after they were just playing in front of the camera the whole time, and they were not so conscious about when we were filming and not. So in the end we were ending up the day of shooting and they still wanted to play or like to go around. So it was really like a different kind of process. It was kind of completely different to the other two stories.
Thank you.
I had just a very quick last question, but then I think perhaps we want to move on to the next, which was about the theme, and of course, as hinted by the title, it seemed to me that the one of the main theme is distance and separation, the kind of borders that we create, the visible and physical ones, but also the invisible and emotional ones. And of course there's immigration is part of the story, especially between the central couple. So I would just wanted to get you to say a little bit more about what particularly you wanted to explore that you were aiming at in terms of this theme of distance and separation, these oceans that are the real continents.
Actually the title is a verse of a poem of a Cuban poet. It's really I was looking for a title when I was doing the short movie and I couldn't find it, so all the ideas were really bad. So I was having like a notes with a lot of titles were all bad. And suddenly like Alex, the last day I was like in Cuba that moment before of leaving, just read me like that poem, and I just wrote down. I was drinking, so I was not I was sure that the day after I would have not like remembered the poem, so I wrote it down on my phone. And because this idea of having like a title that is not like is kind of giving you an idea, an image, evoking like an image instead of explaining something, of branding something, was something that I really like. I mean, that is what I want to do with cinema, or try to do with cinema, is just to evoke like a feeling and an image and something that is not like didascalic somehow. At least trying to do that. So that is because of the title. And about like the main topic of my movie is something that I'm working on since like I start doing cinema, kinda. So it's something that I'm really like interested in, like about separation, borders, you know, separation. I mean, like even the finitude, like the end of things. That is something that really attracts me a lot. A migration, of course, and the connection in between your roots and the place that you end up living and the choice that you end up doing. So it's something that I'm always curious about, that I'm always like curious to know, not only like in filming, but even like in life. So, I mean, it's something that I've been exploring the whole time.
Okay, thank you. All right, so we're... Next up, we have a very different film, science fiction film, if I may say. Maybe we could call it speculative fiction in to some degree, and it's Piero Messina, Another Hand. And we can play the clip. We can play the clip, I believe.
¿Qué estás pensando?
Me gustaría sacarla de aquí.
It would not be a stranger. It would just be a different body with Zoe's memories, Zoe's thoughts. Let her live again. ¿Cómo te fue?
Muy bien. Hubo un momento donde me lo creí. Necesito más tiempo, pero siento que tengo que volver a verla.
No funciona así. El número de los encuentros está establecido desde antes.
How do you feel exactly?
I'm not sleeping well. I'm having strange dreams.
Strange how?
Aprovecha estos momentos para estar bien con ella. You remember the first time you met? No one in here has a clean conscience.
Why are you here?
Hey.
Okay, so, well, same question as for everybody. So if you can tell us a little about the genesis of the film, the process of making it. This film is also not in Italian, it's in Spanish and English. And even the setting is a little bit deliberately vague, as in the best tradition of science fiction and speculative fiction, at least in my opinion. Yeah, how did you arrive at the idea? And how did you arrive, I guess, even at the kind of temporal and geographical location that you wanted to explore?
Okay, I'm sorry, I have to say...
You can say in Italian if you want.
Yeah, no, yeah. Yes, I prefer speaking Italian because my English is very bad, and I'm a bit sick today, so I have vertigo, so I'm looking you moving. So
and in the meantime, he spoke perfect English, right?
So I'm trying, and then we'll see. Okay. Yes, some years ago, I read a subject of a sci-fi movie, a real sci-fi movie. And there were like a revolution or a big war. It's something really different. But there was inside the script something that catch my attention deeply. That there was this little part that talk about this technology that give to the people the chance to transfer the memory of the people died in another body, like host body, you know, other people that rent their body to be someone else. And yes, the subject was really different. But when I read this, I remember that I thought, oh, maybe it could be great, take this idea and put into, not a sci-fi movie, but put into a love story. Take this separation between the body and the soul, the body and the mind, to explore this question that what we love when we love, the nature of the connection between us, and because there are the word, the memories, what we know, but there were, I think, more like the deeply meaning to be together, to be everyone here together with our body, with our presence. And so I spent like 1 year thinking about that in a really theoretic way, not without cinema, just thinking about me, about my relationship, about how I am with the other people, so what means for me stay with you. And there was a moment that I don't know in which way, but for me every time is the same process. This kind of thinking, thoughts, this kind of thoughts, in strange way became the images, really chaotic images, no narrative. And there was, I remember this precise image in my mind that it's the last image that you saw in this trailer. The movie exists. It was so dark, the trailer, but I imagine this. Maybe I remember. I don't know if it was something that I invented or something that I lived. But you know, these two body, naked body, lying together. Two stranger people that don't know who they are, that wake up together in this gentle light, in this silence. And I remember that I thought that maybe there is something interesting to inside this image to speak about love. I remember that I imagined this gaze between these two persons that they don't know who they are, but in another hand they decide to stay together, lying in this bed, in this stillness. And so I start to write. This was my really starting point, writing to understand what is it.
Great.
Okay, my English is finished. Now,
English was
now I skip. Now I drop.
English was great, and I like science fiction a lot, and I personally, and I always felt like, oh, there's not enough. I mean, that's a genre that's very rare in Italian cinema. There's notable exceptions, but I think Italian filmmakers are often discouraged from pursuing that genre. So I guess I appreciate it. Aside from the everything else, I appreciated that some science fiction films are being made, and this is one of them. So I was wondering if it was a hard sell. It was hard to convince producers to take it on, and was it the fact that you didn't really set it in Italy with Italian actors, did it have to do with just because you found these great actors like Garcia Bernal and others, or did you always conceive it to be sort of set in this slightly unclear international city, or where it takes place in the not so distant future?
About the first question, because I think there's 3 questions.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay. I had this feeling.
Yeah.
Okay, the first question. No, I think that if you go yeah, if you say to the one producer, I want to make a genre movie, I think that is really happy, no? Because I remember that the story was, no, this is the anecdotic moment. I remember that when I had my first movie, we were in Venice, and after the screening, my first movie is a movie, really private movie. It's a really art house movie. And but I remember that I was with my producer walking through the Lido, and I told to him, Nicola, next movie I will try to do something else. I will try to, this challenge to do something very private, but I want to understand how I can put something inside a genre movie to explore this possibility to talk to the audience about my imaginary, but inside something a little bit more with a bigger structures and inside some rules. And also I remember that we start to speak about this movie there in Venice. And so when I read this subject that I told you before, everything became okay. Maybe this is my next. And when now I'm going to the second slowly. When I finished the script, I remember that. Because during my writing period, honestly, I didn't imagine clearly this word. Because for me, the sci-fi, I am not very good sci-fi fan. Okay, I am not a big imaginary, and I really love the sci-fi literature, but no cinema. And so when I start to imagine in a real way how to build this world, I immediately understood that, I have in my hand this script. It could be a good sci-fi movie maybe, but because I want to make a love story, first of all, and I have to fight with this script. All my director choice should be choice in big contraposition to this kind of script, this symmetry of the script. So I start to thought about the cast to someone that for me could be the most warm, asymmetric, chaotic, true, actors, and for me was Gael Garcia Bernal. My reference was, because Gael is a great actor, but the other end is like, when I spoke with him and about it's like when you keep the windows open and the wind, And for me it was okay if I have this kind of housemate, partner in this journey, could be great, because I can keep my movie and the emotion of my movie in this attitude, and so we start from this. We call Gael, etc. Now is another story. But going to the third part of your answers about the word, it was nice because when we start because the people around me, producer, say, okay, now tell to us which kind of world we have to build. Like in this future, is like dystopic, or is like. And I remember that every time I said something in terms of indication, like in terms of rules, I say, okay, I gave to them a reference. But every time I remember this clear feeling that I felt that Tradivo betraying my real intention in every indication, in every rules, in everything I said. So I say to guys, okay, don't believe me. Everything is it's wrong. But I had in my mind just one thing so clear that I say to them, I can give to you answer clearly if something could be in this movie or not be in this movie. Object, everything. So we build this strange empiric method that to say, okay, for example, la scenographer protecting the silence, yes. She showed me like chairs, for example. Say, these chairs, yes. And then color, and then little by little we start to go on Google Earth and watch like a lot of cities in the world. They say, okay, these cities, yes, but maybe this not. Everything was very fast because for me it was very important the rhythm of my choice before my thinking wake up. So everything was really instinctive for me. And then little by little we start to take picture, a picture of everything and cities. Then we put everything in this table, and I start to edit, like this landscape from New York, this from Shanghai, this is Rome, this is Paris, this is these chairs, this close up. And with the time, step by step, was fun because little by little, I remember that my partners start to understand this word. Everyone knows another end. Because after the first choice, was so easy for everyone to understand that if your shoes could be in this world or not, because you have the room, you have and so we build the world in this way. I understood at the end, maybe I'm not sure honestly, but that we build this world that it's really coherent with the sentiment of the story, the sentiment of the character, and not following a precise idea. And I'm really happy about that. And stopped.
Can you imagine if you were speaking Italian? L'inglese ti è un po' limitato, ma sei un torrente in piena anche in inglese. Sei un torrente in piena anche in inglese. We'll move on to Laura Luchetti, who was already here at the Casa when she presented her previous film at Open Roads. And in that occasion, she was the only woman director at the festival. This year, we have to say that you're not alone. There are
the only woman in person here
because
we have another 3, so it's 4 women.
It's an improvement.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
And Laura Luchetti brings to Open Road a beautiful film. It's an adaptation of Cesare Pavese's novel La Bella Estate. We dedicated many events to Cesare Pavese in this very place, and we had one last fall about Cesare Pavese's translator. So it's an author that did a lot to bridge the gap between Italy and the US. He was madly in love with American literature.
Fell in love with an American actress and learned himself, taught himself English, and he became an amazing translator, and probably had never been to America or England.
Never been.
Yeah, he was a genius.
Yeah. And we see the trailer, and then we go back to Cesare Pavese.
Com'è fare l'amore?
Diventi importante per qualcuno, per qualche ora.
C'era una sigaretta? Non fumo. Peccato. Vorrei provare anch'io. Perché? Voglio che mi guardi un altro. E mi faccia vedere chi sono. Into the clouds, high above. If you play, I'll bleed the same.
bisognerebbe mai abituarsi al dolore. L'infelicità non serve a niente.
If you ran away, come back home. Just come home.
Non è il trailer giusto, no?
Quello non è quello internazionale con la musica classica, però va bene.
Vabbè. Per questo però è la musica che c'è nel film, fa parte.
No, questo era il trailer italiano che ha una canzone inglese, quello internazionale ha la colonna sonora che è un po' più classica.
Laura, parlando di classico internazionale moderno, you work on an adaptation of a very, very important novel in Italian literature. And you did a great job. And one of the classes we teach here is actually about adaptation from novel. So the relationship between cinema and literature. And from what I heard, you are in awe of Cesare Pavese. You're a great admirer of Pavese. And yet I think that your adaptation is great because you're not enslaved to Cesare Pavese's book, but you do your own thing, starting with Cesare Pavese's idea. Example.
Asking for forgiveness every day.
I don't think you need to. You're doing your thing. And there's definitely, one can tell that you are, again, in awe of Pavese, his language, the way in which he describes the characters. But at the same time, there are changes in the characters. And I know that you did a sort of a workshop with your actors that are amazing, by the way, very young, but very brilliant, all of them, and coming from different experiences, I gather. And you did, before you started shooting, workshops in which they read, they discussed it, they word the characters, and they recreated situations among themselves. And that led to a development of the characters from how they were in Pavese and how they appear in the film. And I think that is a great thing that you did. It's not betraying Pavese. It's actually moving out and doing something else, but with great respect of the text. For example, when I was reading that book, there were some characters, especially male characters, that are absolutely detestable and that you don't have any empathy towards. I mean, to me, I was repulsed by them. And in the film, they're not like that. There is some almost like looking for somehow redemption or explanation of how they're like that. And it's a lot of fragility behind them. So I think you by adapting it, you interpret it and you justify somehow those characters that I couldn't stand in the book. And you not justify them, but create a more complex and complete portrait of them. Am I reading too much into it?
You've touched at least 16 subject matters.
I know. That's my job.
I have to remember everything from the very
Pick
beginning.
one.
No, that's very, thank you. I mean, if you've seen all of that, for me, it's a compliment and I'm really happy. It's been a hard work to approach a book of a writer who's a legend and also has never been adapted. And there's a reason why, because it's amazing, but it's very evocative, melancholic, and special. That the imageries and the images of the books are very special, but usually the structure and the plot is not what is remembered for. But when you make a film, you need structure and plot. So that was the biggest challenge. And when they offered me the book, which by chance I had read 3-4 months prior, that conversation with the producers, I thought this is a beautiful book and maybe can be a novel, can become a film. No, can't. And then the producer came along and said, well, have you read The Beautiful Summer? And I said, yes, a couple of months ago, and I think it's beautiful. Well, we bought the rights and we would like you to adapt the novel and make it into a film. And I said, no, thank you. Very reluctant because it's a small film. It's not that we had the budget to splash out, on whatever we needed, and that was a challenge. But also, it's the text. It's an author that is very important, and so I was really scared. And the other bit that really terrified me was that the only other director who adapted one of Cesare Pavese's novels was Michelangelo Antonioni. I had so many reasons to say no. And he won Venice, I think, in 1956 with the Le Amiche, which I didn't want to see until I finished my film, and that made it even worse because I thought, what have I done? Anyway, I try to be very strict to the. I love the novel, I love the author, and this is what I say all the time. When you are in love, you do make crazy things and you take crazy decisions, like the one to adapt that one of his novels into a film. But I try to be very faithful to the book, but I took some liberties. There were things that I mentioned in the book that I developed, like the main character works in a fashion atelier, but that's only mentioned in the book, and I created a place for her to be. I created a place for this young woman to become somebody, and I created the owner, this lady who's the owner of the atelier, who is an older version of Genia, the main protagonist. So she falls somehow for her because she sees herself when she was young. And also the male. I mean, I've been criticized because the male of my films are very harsh. Well, they should have read the novel. I think I did men a favor because I made them much sweeter, and I tried to add some feelings which were not definitely told in the story, and especially with the brother. That is one of the liberty I have taken, the relationship of the main protagonist Genia with the brother, because I love to talk about a relationship, brother and sister, which is something rare that I don't see that often. And I took my brother as, an inspiration, as a source of inspiration for the character of Severino. And so every time I was writing, I was thinking about him and the relationship I had with him. But mainly, apart from that, and just to make the boys a little bit sweeter and polish, some descriptions of the behavior of the characters and make it a little bit more modern. It was all there. It was all there in. It was all there in the novel. There could have been so many adaptations of that novel. A political one, a generation one, because the film is about a bunch of kids, as I call them, that were trying to make a life, and they were trying to become somebody, and the age of the characters in the book is between 16 and 20. So it's amazing when I was reading the book for the first time, thinking that girl could have been my grandmother, and that's something that made me think. But then eventually, after I read the novel many times, I thought that the pages were on fire. Literally every time Pavese was writing about the relationship of the two girls. And that is the sort of the direction I have taken. So I concentrated on this relationship, which was very modern. And the voice of the protagonist, the voice of Genia, is written by a man, but you forget that it's a man writing that character and all the story. I mean, Cesare Pavese is amazing in writing about youth and adolescence. And it's amazing when he writes as a woman. You forget is a man, the author of the book. And so little by little, I think I got 2.5 of your 16 questions. But yes, I approached the adaptation with love and terror. That's the only thing I can say, and with a lot of respect. And then obviously, there are many other things that you do in a film, from costumes and the work with the production designer, in order to make, because the films is about adolescents, very young people, and I was hoping for young people to watch the film because it's about them, because the story is set in 1938, but the subject matter is universal. It's a story of a body of a young girl that grows and needs to be listened, touched, loved. It's a story of a young girl who wants to find herself and understand who she loves and how can she love. And it's a story about a young girl who has to find the guts to be herself and love a woman. And although the time have changed and we can talk more freely about these things. The turbulence in your heart when you are at that age and you need to take a decision are exactly the same. So I started doing the adaptation looking at Ginny as my grandma, but I ended up looking at Ginny as my daughter, and she was probably the biggest source of inspiration for the character.
Bellissimo. And you did a fantastic job.
Oh, grazie.
You really did.
My ego now is like enormous. It's floating around the theater.
You know what's the next challenge for Laura Luchetti?
She's a tiny one.
Mica tanto.
I'm just part of a big team.
She's the director of one of the episodes of the new Netflix adaptation of The Leopard, Il Gattopardo. It's going to come up next.
I should be ashamed, shouldn't I?
Why? Pavese, La
Watching all
Pelusa.
these massive classics.
You don't seem intimidated at all, and that's great. Lei vuoi fare?
Oh, I wanted to. Well, thank you again for a beautiful film. I second Stefano's words. I guess like one thing I wanted to mention is there's actually two directors who adapted Pavese actually, Straub and Ouillet. Husband and wife director team from Swiss French, but it was an Italian production in the 70s. They adapted Dialoghi con Lucò and Luna in Falò in the same movie. It's the one movie of two books.
Yes.
You heard of it?
No, but there's a trilogy of The Beautiful Summer. I mean, so that's why the other 3 novels, and I mean, the trilogy is called Beautiful Summer, and it's The Beautiful Summer, La Casa, Il Diavolo sulla collina, Tra donne sole. Grazie. And of that trilogy, the only adaptation. There's a TV film as well, but which I haven't seen. But then there was the Antonioni film, which was quite daunting.
Yeah. But okay, great. And I think the question I wanted to ask, the one thing that I remember, I don't remember the novel, the queer elements in the novel being so emphasized, and that's something that, like, I guess it's part of like what you changed. And I think that's the central love stories between these two women. And I wanted to hear a little bit more about how important that was to. Correct me if I'm wrong, because I read the novel a while back. I think it was in high school even. So I might miss
one of the few.
Yeah.
Pavese, when the first time that the novel came out, it described the novel as a story of painters and models. In further edition of the novel, it said it's I hope I can translate this properly. It's the story of a virginity that defends itself. So it changed. The main love story on the surface is the love story, which is like more of a sexual relationship between Genia and the painter, because this Genia is a young seamstress and has a simple life, but it's a hard worker. She comes from the countryside. She lives on her own with her brother. They live, just the two of them in the city. They want to make it. And it's a generation of Italians, like exactly my grandparents were like that, who were trying to build a better future in a big city like Turin. And so she enters through this gorgeous woman, Amelia, who's a model. She enters the bohemian quarters of Turin, and immediately she gets absolutely, taken into a new kind of, life and environment and music and drugs and absinthe and you name it. And she starts having a relationship with this painter who's like a womanizer. They're there, it's a bunch of painters in an atelier, girls come in and out. But underneath, there is this relationship she has with Amelia. So they're together, then they fight, then they're jealous of each other, then Amelia disappears, then she can come back. And that builds up a tension that then leads to what it's obvious to the reader, but not to the protagonist, that Amelia is the person she loves. So when she has sex with Guido, she's thinking about Amelia, but in the late 30s, that probably wasn't the easiest decision to take, to run off with a woman. And also because there was the pressure, which is in the book, and I tried to translate that in the film as well, the pressure for a girl to have a boyfriend. So they all like talking about, have you had sex? And And like, do you have a man? Do you have a man? So society would somehow push you and force you to have a man, you know, with you, which then surprised me a lot, because the novel was written in 1949, and immediately I thought about like my grandmother being like that, and I thought, oh, well, she got virgin to the wedding, you know, but actually it wasn't not like that. It's very modern, because the voices of the kids are like the voices of the kids of today. So it's there, but what you get impressed with when you read the novel is the amount of sex she has with Guido. So that's why Amelia gets put in the shadow, but she's always there. You know, she gets jealous because she knows what's happening. So I don't think I forced that part. I mean, I found it was there, and I thought, I'm gonna focus on that. And I shot many more scenes with Guido, but then I didn't put them in the film because the direction I'd taken was the very contemporary story that was written 80 years ago, and that is contemporary because it's about, you know, feelings that they never change. They are now exactly the same as they were for our grandparents, or they were for people who lived in the 18th century.
Okay, great, thank you. And the last film is An Endless Summer, Una Sconfinata Domenica, by Alain Parroni, who's right here next to me. I think we should go on and play the clip, and we can say a few words.
Ascoltatemi un attimo. Non sono mai riuscito a parlare, a capire quello che provo veramente. Mentre voi mi avete sempre fatto sentire importante, utile per qualcuno, e poi che cazzo mi avete fatto? Non sono riuscito manco a fare una delle cose più stupide, come mettermi in un'altra vita.
Sta a fare una cosa importante.
Speriamo,
è una cosa importante, no? Speriamo. Sta a lasciare il segno,
So, Alain.
I prefer talking in Italian. It's impossible to...
No, certo. Facciamo italiano and then I translate.
Okay.
Yeah. Can I ask the question in English?
Yeah, in English.
Okay. Just if you can tell us a little bit about you know, how you arrived at this idea. It's a very atmospheric film, very poetic. It really kind of you can feel yourself indulging in the sounds, the feeling of the places, and how the characters experience these places, and it was very, very striking. And then I have stylistic questions later, but let's just hear about like how you arrived at it.
Vabbè,
in italiano.
Diciamo, vabbè, fare il primo film ti confronta per forza di cose con tutto ciò che ti educa a percepire il mondo, e quindi ho iniziato a sviluppare il film facendo molte interviste a un centinaio di adolescenti. Il film ho iniziato a scriverlo nella fase in cui passavo dall'adolescenza alla vita adulta, e non so se intanto vuoi tradurre o facciamo
io facendo le domande. So when you make your first film, you want to include as much as possible all your experiences, something like your colleague also was saying. So he interviewed about 100 adolescents. The film is all about adolescents. And he started writing while he was in the process of interviewing these kids.
E quello che emergeva da queste interviste erano due cose che mi hanno colpito moltissimo. Queste interviste erano di adolescenti nella campagna romana in cui sono cresciuto, e era la grande volontà di lasciare una traccia nel tempo, ma non avere nessuno strumento, quindi magari a volte facendo un figlio molto giovani o attirando l'attenzione in maniera aggressiva o violenta, facendo i vandali un po' in giro.
And in these interviews, there were some common traits. And one of them was the desire to leave a mark in living. But given the fact that these are kids that live in the outskirts of Rome or in the countryside just surrounding Rome, immediately surrounding Rome, they really do not have any tool, any instrument to leave this mark, except maybe have a child when they're still very, very young, or do something violent and extreme and aggressive.
E l'altra cosa che mi ha molto colpito è che l'educazione emotiva che avevano i ragazzi provenisse in realtà dal cinema, e che in un qualche modo ogni aspettativa che avevano verso i sentimenti, l'amore, la tristezza, l'avevano imparata dai film e non dalla vita. Quindi ho capito che il cinema era, e il luogo in cui vivevano erano i due genitori portanti.
And so he understood that many of these desires, these aspirations that they expressed were not the result of their own life experience, but of cinema, of something that they perceived through films and television, and these were their parents.
Quindi ho capito che il primo film il mio primo film sarebbe dovuto essere un po' quell'adolescente che prende per il collo i genitori e grida in faccia un po' la sua esistenza. Ho capito che dovevo creare un film che giocasse con il linguaggio del cinema, che quindi rimettesse un po' in discussione la narrativa, e che facesse quindi delle immagini, la narrazione stessa, e che però appunto lasciasse una traccia di me, quindi di dove sono cresciuto, di quello che ho vissuto.
So this film, I felt that I had to be like that adolescent that takes his parents by the neck and shakes them and tells them, you have to realize that I exist, I'm here, and you have to deal with me. And I did that with cinematographic images, because again, cinematography is what impressed the psyche of these kids and gave them their aspirations and their goals.
Appunto, siamo una generazione che è cresciuta totalmente con la grammatica delle immagini, cioè da quando prima di imparare a scrivere oggi riusciamo a scattare una foto. Quindi ho capito che per raccontare l'adolescenza era importante giocare con le immagini, come dicevi, col suono, col cinema.
And so I understood that we are a generation that was born more than with writing, making pictures and modifying them and creating soundtracks. So it's through images and sounds that I wanted to tell this story, more than words.
Okay, great, thank you. Well, I guess my question, I guess it's more, I want to get you to speak a little bit more about like your stylistic approach. The film is very striking in the way that it uses images and sounds and editing, montage, and in many ways it's interesting to compare it with Tommaso's film, because they both have a kind of sociological, ethnographic, documentary element, a quality, but if that one sort of sits back and looks and gazes at things in a more detached way, here you really puts us in like the sort of the subjectivity of the characters is less observational and more experiential, and this is achieved, correct me if I'm wrong, a little bit through impressionistic and immersive techniques. Again, we talked about the editing techniques, the discontinuity of spaces and times, and I guess I wanted to hear more about what the process of coming up with the style was. Obviously, a lot of it you discovered in post-production, I assume, but a lot of it also you thought about it for a long time.
Il film è coprodotto da Wim Wenders, che è stato forse il mentore più grande da questo punto di vista, cioè mi ha donato veramente della consapevolezza di che cosa serve fare un film oggi, no? In cui appunto l'intrattenimento è sotto tantissime altre forme, cioè attraverso videogame, cioè soprattutto per i giovani, e quindi mi ha spinto ancora di più a esagerare con il linguaggio.
Wim Wenders is one of the co-producers of this film, but he was also a mentor for him, and it's exactly the influence of Wim Wenders that created this obsession with images. The image is the thing that speaks more than anything else.
E quindi diciamo che quello che ho sentito di più nell'adolescenza era una mancanza di punti di riferimento, e quindi diciamo che con il montaggio e con la struttura narrativa l'obiettivo era quella di schivare insomma qualsiasi riferimento e quindi far sentire anche lo spettatore a disagio, come un adolescente che non sa che cosa attaccarsi, ma riconoscere nelle immagini qualcosa di familiare.
So, and the fact is that what he misses the most in his youth, and what he realizes that this generation of kids is missing, is structure, points of reference, strong elements in their lives. And he wanted to convey that same kind of unease, of difficulty of living without these points of reference in his films. And he says he's aware of the fact that the spectator will feel uncomfortable very often, and we do. So you succeeded. And it's part of the idea that through that unease, he transfers you to the experience that these adolescents are having, the lack of firm points of reference.
Yeah, well, to add to this, I guess one of the things that also like the film sort of makes a very strong decision to avoid giving us until at some point, I think it's a cumulative effect, is that there's no I would say like a sort of central, like it's plotless, there's no central dramatic conflict, but there is plenty of conflict which builds up more and more, and then as you enter the film, you feel it as a kind of almost delayed effect, and it's all the more powerful, I think, because of that. So I was wondering if that's also something that you sort of had in mind. I wanna sort of discover this conflict as I work with my actors, as I observe them, or it's something that you perhaps even you had more constructed at first and then you kind of did away with it in the editing process?
In realtà è stato un film abbastanza difficile da scrivere su carta, c'è questo processo anche di accumulo emotivo, quindi in realtà quello che ho fatto è la cosa che mi veniva più semplice, cioè disegnare e fare foto. Quindi in realtà quello che portava ai produttori accanto alle pagine scritte erano tanti disegni e tante immagini e tanti luoghi e tanta atmosfera, quello che dicevamo prima.
So the fact is that the film, more than a written script, has images and emotions and atmospheres, and that's the reason why more than words, what he brought to the producers were photographs, colors, impressions, visual impressions, and that's very much in line with what you were saying before.
Do you have any other?
No, no, this concept of you transfer the unease of a generation to the audience, I think it's brilliant because you really achieve that. And we are disoriented at a certain point, very much like they are. So you succeed in what you are doing. Congratulations. And I thank all of them. I thank Cinecittà for having brought these directors to New York. As you could tell, there is substance, there is thought, there is intelligence, and there is hope for the future. And there is a cinema that is Italian, and yet at the same time is not provincially Italian. Bravo. 3 of the films are in Italian, 2 in English. They use all the languages and more. And that's what we want to see in Italian cinema. It's a cinema that is able to enter into a dialogue with other cinemas at the position of absolute parity and more. Congratulations. Thank you. Have a great summer, and we'll see you in the fall.
Grazie. No, ho cercato di sintetizzare perché